Good evening. I'm going to get started. I was just waiting for some people to log on and join me for this training. It doesn't seem to be anybody present, although there's 5 people registered. Well, in any case, my name is Erica Epstein. I'm the presenter for this training tonight. Tonight's topic is outdoor classroom environments that teach. And I'm bringing to you this training so that you get an idea of how we teach in using outdoor, modalities, such as, different types of learning skills and teaching skills that we incorporate from indoor use to outdoor. So there's many different environments, but this is considered the outside environment, and it is completely based on the standards that we follow with this from the state of Florida. So I see there's actually one person that just joined. I'm going to just pause a moment and just make sure that if anybody's logging in now, they do it soon so that we can get going here. Just going to give you another moment. Okay, I'm going to begin because I do not see too many people other than that one person logged in. So I'm going to get started. Why do we use the outdoor classroom? Well, a lot of people have different views about using the outdoor classroom, and for the most part, we use it to allow for an exploratory approach because it enables us to use a different environment, a different setting other than the classroom. Students would be able to gain skills in a natural environment, and teachers could encourage students to take a hands-on approach to learn by accessing multiple interdisciplines. So when I say that, obviously being outdoors itself is a hands-on approach because we have the chance to teach children that it's okay to touch dirt. It's okay to touch insects. It's okay to, actually get down and dirty and explore our natural environment. And it's really important that we teach children that because as they grow older later in life, they need to really have a grasp as far as, what an outdoor classroom could actually provide back to them. It's not just about going outside for recess and just kicking the ball, but it's actually being able to create an environment that's going to allow them to explore. And we also know that in order for us to enjoy outdoors, we need to appreciate nature. So even from very young, it's really wise to introduce the outdoor environment. Maybe go on like a hiking trip or a hiking trail if any children go to a summer camp. I know that's usually offered. Sometimes, going outside and exploring through a microscope, different insects, such as a butterfly's wing, or those types of things they promote an enjoyment and an appreciation and a respect for the outdoors. And it's also important to note that in the outdoor environment allows natural light for children to learn better. And that was taken from Scholastic, Early Childhood Today. And nature would be a great opportunity for growth and learning for children. It is, a lot of people, shy away from teaching outdoors. I know that when I used to teach, that was something that I used to enjoy doing because I would take a blanket and, a picnic basket, and I would just have my kids sit outside and, really soak in the sun. And even when it was like drizzling, it's okay. That's part of nature, and that's part of, learning how to cope in different environments. And also, it provides an unlimited opportunity for higher level thinking. So it's about conceptualizing and really scaffolding the ability to join multidisciplines within our approach. So you can introduce math, you can introduce science, you can introduce language and literature. All of those things encompass what holding an outdoor classroom entails. If I'm hoping that everybody hears me, if you can just let me know if everybody does hear me. Okay. If you could just write in the chat box and let me know that you're hearing me. Okay, I'll continue. Okay, I see one person. Very good. Can hear me. That's great. Okay, excellent. Moving along. Okay, so thank you for both Daria and Adil Hiren. They both can hear me. Excellent. Okay, how do we plan and prepare for taking students outdoors? Well, this is very interesting because in order for us to make sure that we're taking our children outdoors, there's always some preparation work that goes into it. Having a plan in place, being able to know what is involved as far as safety goes. Is there water? Is there poison ivy? Are there bees, like a bee's nest? Is there, raccoons or, any opossums or snakes in Florida? There's water ground snakes and there's spiders. All of those types of element that nature creates is something we have to be aware of. Also, we need to establish, model, and practice expected behavior in the outdoor classroom using many of the same rules that we've established in the indoor classroom. So what I spoke about before, being able to take our lessons outside, also entails being able to follow what we teach our children inside the classroom. We might teach them to have indoor voices, and we might teach them to, walk properly and not touch our neighbors and, be kind to one another. Those same rules apply to outdoors. They're no different. We just may have some provisions and some rules that have to do with, being outdoors, such as, don't wander away from the group, and, try not to go and touch things that you're not asked to touch. But you want to always make sure you're keeping your eye on the children and doing roll counts. That's really important. And we're also inspecting the property because, as you know, the health department will, of course, inspect for us if we're not doing our job and we're not upholding to the rules of, making sure that the playground is clean and tidy. But I want you to think as we go along, what other expectations or rules would you have for your children as far as the playground or as far as the outdoor environment goes? If you can type it in as we're speaking, and this way I can read them off. So keep that question in mind. We are also planning and preparing for taking students outdoors. by also thinking about volunteers, because sometimes we may have an older student that may need some community service hours, and they do volunteer after school, and those could possibly join, the 5-year-old children, and they could, assist in providing their help as far as management goes. It's hard sometimes for one teacher to keep their eye on 15 children at one time. So it's important to have as many volunteers as you can. You want to also establish a line leader, because the line leader will be in charge of how the line is going. And in fact, it's really important that you put the line leader, believe it or not, in the very back of the line so that they can keep an eye from going all the way to the back to the front, not the other way around. Some teachers are under the impression that keeping a line leader in the front is going to help the rest of the children. Well, it's actually a distraction, and it doesn't really give the teacher any insight as to what's going on if the teacher's walking straight ahead of the children. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind when, the children are going, walking outside. Also, very important, we know that we must take our first aid kits. We must take a cell phone. Well, in this case, the teacher should have a walkie-talkie for emergency purposes. That's a really important point. As a teacher, I would always ensure that I had a whistle with me and that I had some backup as far as, God forbid, there being an emergency. And, being outside in the backyard and nobody being able to hear me. It's really important that you make contact with, administration up in the front office. If something were to happen, if a child, stepped too far down into a ditch, or, wasn't looking and bumped into another child in the line, or, perhaps maybe they touched the fence and there was like a sharp object sticking out of the fence, we always want to make sure that we're well prepared. And you also want to make sure the office staff knows where you are going and what your plans are. Obviously, we follow a classroom schedule. Sometimes when we're not in our classroom, we can be outside, of course. But you always want to make sure that no matter what, you are following your schedule and you're letting the other teachers know, or the other staff know rather, you have plans of being outside. Now, I use Bloom's taxonomy a lot because of their higher level thinking. As you know, the pyramid starts with creating, evaluating, analyzing, applying, understanding, and remembering. So the pinnacle is at the top. And we use the Bloom's taxonomy theory to really apply that to how we envision both the indoor classroom and the outdoor classroom. And it's really important that, we're applying and analyzing skills of what we're teaching our children during circle time, and we're actually carrying that forward into the curriculum, and that being outdoors. A lot of teachers, they don't connect what they teach in the classroom to have that carry through when they go outside on the playground. But I really feel it's very important, because whatever the children learn inside the classroom must also be taught outside the classroom. And I say that because children often, forget, and they have to really be reminded several times. You can't expect to teach a skill and not be able to, reinforce it somehow. So being able to give them the opportunity of teaching them a skill inside the classroom and then doing it in another environment, such as outside, really helps the child to apply the skill even more. And it may sound, a little bit awkward to you, but I remember when I taught the children, about planting a seed. And I brought in the soil, I brought in, whatever needed to be brought in that day, a paper towel, I got the whole 9 yards prepared, and the children were all excited. But had I done that outside, I think the element of being outside and having that suspense and being able to show the children right then and there, you know what, this actually is where plants grow, and this is where seeds grow, and what better way to show them than in the actual natural environment. So I think it's a really important part of, this pyramid, how we apply the knowledge. Now, there are sample outdoor guidelines of what students should know before going outdoors, and what students like the outdoor community looks and feels like. So as you see here, there's a bunch of children on the right, and there's curriculum on the bottom, the book from where the teacher is getting the information. But students should really know before going outdoors how we are modeling techniques and steps that we expect our students to follow. So again, bringing up rules, what do you expect for them to do? And how do you expect them to behave? How do you intend to implement the actual lesson plan that you're going to teach them? Are you going to, instead of a chart or instead of a whiteboard board, what is your modality for teaching them something outside? What are the steps you're going to be following? And, just like we have expectations of our students, we should also have expectations of our own teaching and being able to be prepared beforehand. We should also be establishing consequences and following through for inappropriate behavior as in the indoor classroom. So again, what happens in the classroom has to happen on the outside. So we need to remind children that, there's rules when we go outside. And just because we're outside doesn't mean it's not a classroom. We're forming a classroom, it's just looking different. We're also setting physical boundaries. Children tend to forget where they're at. And I think it's really important that we remind children, just because we're outside doesn't give anybody the liberty to act any different. We keep our hands to ourselves. We're not going to push and shove. We're going to be respectful of one another. You want to definitely reinforce those rules. And you also want to emphasize keeping up with the leader and staying on trails provided. If your school has a nature trail, you don't want anybody wandering off. So those are really important rules and expectations that we should set on our students before going outside. So before I go to the next slide, I was just thinking back. Nobody had typed in as far as my question before. I'm going to go back for a second. What are some things that you do to prepare your students when they're supposed to be following rules? So I'd like you to maybe write in your answer as far as maybe something I didn't touch upon, something that you can share with the rest of the people that are enrolled in this training. That would be really helpful. Okay, what can the students expect from the outdoor classroom? So in short, we want to make sure that the lessons that we prepared are not as extensive as the lessons that we have for inside. Just because, children often get distracted and it is a different environment, we want to really keep that in mind. We also want to model the techniques and steps we expect our students to follow. Just like I said before, we want to pick a color and have students find as many things in nature that have that color. This will really tell us, are our children following our directions? Are they on point? Are they distracted? Those are some of the expectations that we need to know. And so picking a color such as green, you want to almost make it a game. Who can find me 3 items on this playground that are green, and send them off to do that. Also, that's engaging them in, being able to listen to directions and being able for them to follow, having hand-eye coordination, having gross motor skills, being able to walk or run to the object. We're doing things in ways in which, children are not realizing that we're doing the checklist, but we're actually testing them. Are they able to follow 2-step directions? Are they able to follow 3-step directions? I remember for the class tool, those are some items that we needed to find out and investigate about our children. So what perfect way to do that than on the playground? They can also pick a letter of the alphabet and identify as many objects as they can that begin with that letter. So like, for example, let's say the letter T. Who can find me something that starts with the letter T in the outdoor environment? Somebody might say, oh, I found, whatever, a tomato. Let's say they have, we have a garden growing, T for tomato. And then you could probe them. I wonder how that tomato actually grew there. Let's have a lesson about, planting vegetables, things of that nature. Also, we want to be able to count pace, that was supposed to be a S, sorry. Count spaces between landmarks. Discuss average, median, and mode. So I know, for math, sometimes, even for the older children, we expect them to know the distance from one foot to another foot. So we can actually ask the children, how long or how wide do you think this playground is? What do you think the average length of the playground is? And tell me in measurements. Like almost do a math lesson and kind of have them frame it out for you that way. But they may be too young to really have those concepts down, but it would be wiser if the children were older to do that. And also phonology. So we want to be able to, have children look for signs of the season and make predictions. So for example, only in Florida do we have really, we don't really have seasons. But if you're in a different part of the country, whether it be New York, whether it be California, whether it be North Dakota, where climates are different, and the actual turf on the ground is a lot different. It could be rugged areas, it could be rocks and stones. We want to be able to actually point out to children that by looking at the earth and by looking at the leaves and by studying the trees, we're able to make predictions about the coming of a season. I know living up north from New York, we had 4 seasons, and every time the fall would hit, we would see the leaves turning colors. So they would go from orange to yellow to green. It was quite beautiful. And, we used to point out to children, what do you think? How do you think the leaves are turning these colors? How do you think they got there in the first place? To have that science lesson with them. And I just want to also point out before we go further that because this training requires CEUs, I'd like to really emphasize the fact that, you know, it's really required that you participate. So again, I'm asking you to write in. Nobody actually did. My question to you is, up until now, what type of preparations do you make to go outside? I'm throwing out that question once again, hoping that I get some answers. Because if you don't participate, I do have an obligation to inform the administration that, you know, even though you're physically present and listening, I need for you to actually be typing in some answers. Thank you. I just got an answer. So garden keeping, okay, if you could elaborate what you mean by that. You know, does that mean that you assign somebody the task of cleaning up the play yard? I don't really know how you mean that. If you can just be a little more specific. Okay, so actually we've come up to the halfway mark in this training video segment, and I do have a video that I want to share with you. It's actually not a very long video, but it is a video nonetheless. So I want to play it, but oh, you're having trouble writing. Okay. Not sure why. If you can tell me why you would be having trouble writing. Hmm? Yeah, I'm afraid the writing aspect would be on your end, but I do have to keep moving on. So if you give me a moment, I'm gonna hold on one second. If you could just give me a moment, I'm not sure how to play this video.
For years, we've been doing sort of upper body gross motor as the pure focus of playgrounds, and it's not really working for us. We need full-on cognitive engagement during play. We need kids to have their brains fully tuned in and turned on, and that doesn't happen unless their senses are engaged. So smooth, perfect, anything doesn't work. We need it to be dirty. We need there to be, you know, stuff that they can play. There need to be loose parts. We need to stop cleaning everything, and there is something glorious in that, and that's what tunes their heads in. And their injury rates will drop if their heads are engaged in play, and the spontaneous social collaboration rates will increase. Meaning, without our intervention, they'll just play with each other, which is what we want. That's what we need from them. We want them to want to do this.
What skills do they end up with that they can't get here on a normal playground, so to speak?
So the big one is social collaboration. There's also really good research on STEM, and it turns out that science, technology, engineering, math, all of those things actually tune in and tune up if your brains are engaged. So you can't learn properly without engaging all those different parts of who we are and what makes us up. We're actually hardwired for this at an evolutionary scale. We need this experience. We need to smell.
Oops. If you could hold on 1 second.
And to taste and guess what? If we don't do that, I'm not saying they got to eat some bark, but if you don't get your hands dirty and get into it, then your immune system doesn't work either. So there's a huge health repercussion to not doing this. So, and aside from anything else, I mean, the honest truth, it's just more fun. It's just more fun.
Okay, so I hope that those of you that couldn't see, I saw that you wrote in you couldn't see, but you could hear. took something away from this video, which was actually something I was going to ask you. If you can write in and tell me one fact that you heard this gentleman say about natural playgrounds being good for kids. I'm going to give you a few minutes to type that in. Okay, so I don't really see anybody typing in their answer, but moving along. So one of the things this gentleman pointed out as far as natural playgrounds being good for children is the importance of brain connection and there being stamina and engagement. And that's really, really an important part of having an outdoor environment. Just to quote, we need to play with the outdoors since we are hardwired on an evolutionary scale. This enables us to combine math, science, and all other subject areas to make sense and brings it together for us. So it's really impactful to be able to understand this on a whole new level that, children don't just get taught something on a simplistic level, but they actually scaffold what they learn, and it's about bringing together and being able to combine all of the subject content and knowing that, it's right there in front of them, being able to interact with one another. It just brings a focus that may otherwise not be as sharp if learning was conducted in an indoor environment. Like I said earlier, it brings a whole new dimension and a whole new level of the thrill and attraction to learning better and to having that brain connection, that stamina, that development that children often lack from just sitting in a classroom and almost sitting like a wallflower or just knowing that a child can have the ability to soak something in differently in a different environment, provides students with a sense of freedom and anti-anxiety. It actually, studies have shown that children are more relaxed in an outdoor environment. Whatever they're feeling inside, they do let it out on the outside. And often, how many times have you heard teachers or even myself say about my own students, every time we go outside, this kid is so different. Well, of course, because he's being exposed to something he's not ordinarily, when he's inside a classroom and, the temperature is a certain way and the environment is a certain way and very structured and routinized. But when they're outside, they have the ability to really pick up steam and really come full circle. So I want you to think about what are some activities that enrich outdoor play. For example, I give you certain examples. If you're doing observations, the first walk could be very short, walk just observing things in nature. So we can observe, right? We can also do a theme walk, which, walks could have a theme, looking for things that start with a letter of the alphabet, like I said before, a certain color or a shape. We can do a language walk. We can develop a language bank to increase students' nature vocabulary by identifying things in nature. So, for example, it's not very ordinary that you would see a log on a playground, right? But sometimes, when trees lose, parts of their limbs, so to speak, they do have branches and they do get cut. And sometimes, you'll see a tree stump and you might want to draw those children over to it and say, how old do you think this tree is? And you might want to count the rings on the tree to find out how old the tree would be. So those types of activities actually build on the language for children. Now here's a sample lesson plan to think about. If you give each student a laminated picture chart and have them identify things they observe while on a walking trip. So there's many different ways of doing that. First thing is you can do an animal tracking chart to identify animal tracks and figure out where they return to live. So most likely, you know, in South Florida, you're going to see maybe, you know, squirrels, and you're going to see birds, and you're going to see, you know, some, I don't know, you're not going to see any like exotic animals, but maybe you'll see a bunny rabbit from time to time. But you're going to be able to track or have the children track those animal, you know, so to speak, tracks, and have them figure out where they return to live. You can do a leaf or pine needle cone chart to identify various types of leaves and what properties each have. That's you know, a very common science lesson. You know, are the pine needles sharp? Are they smooth? Are they round? Is it edged? Is it, you know, things of that nature. A tree chart to identify different species of trees. You know, in Florida, mostly we have palm trees and, you know, all different types. Oak trees, things of that nature. All activities that are conducted outside can be inside. So for example, I listed some examples here. Math, you know, whether we're data gathering, types of leaves, most types, biggest, smallest, comparing, those are all, you know, related to math. Then, like we said before, creating a word bank, having children expand on their vocabulary by, you know, using nature words and things that you would find in nature. Reading, have students read a book about nature. Talk about it, maybe, you know, maybe you could introduce it on the inside, in the inside classroom, and do like a book walk or a book talk. And then once you get outside, you can actually have them read it. And you know, either a student could read it depending on their age level, or the teacher could read it for the students. But you almost want to bring it to real life by having them look around their environment. You can do a writing lesson. Whatever is collected through journals or free writing can be done outside. You know, my favorite one was to, the children would have to observe, you know, the playground when it was nice and dry. And then when I would take them outside later on in the day and it would rain and the soil would become, you know, wet and enriched, I would say to them, you know, how has the playground changed? You know, what do we see happening to the grass? What do we see happening to the soil? Do we see things we didn't see before when the grass was dry? You know, things of that nature. And that also promotes writing. We want to also practice a lesson on rocks, studying weather, insects, erosion, soil, and engage with the objects through hands-on contact. You know, like I said before, and like the video showed you, don't shy away from having the children get dirty. That's part of learning. That's part of the experience. I see here that Aldheirin, she wrote, we have a garden. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. It's like it's blocked. Something's blocking. I don't know. We have a garden and I don't know what happened, but it seemed like the power went out for a minute. I'm hoping that you guys can hear me. If you guys can just type in a quick yes or no. Okay, thank you. So actually, the person's comment from before disappeared, and I apologize. If you can retype what you were writing in, I think it was Adli Hayrin. I'm sorry that it just knocked out for a minute. While I'm waiting for you to do that, I'm going to continue. Okay, so, oops. Okay, so how does language arts play a major role in outdoor play? So we already talked about, how we can build off activities out inside the classroom to bring them outside. But how does language arts play a major role in outdoor play? Well, those activities that I just spoke about, we can include them in reading, language, and writing. The ways in which we can do that is in reading, we can have a simple activity to enhance reading, which would be to simply read with or have your students, engage in reading somehow with you. Language, develop a language bank. Okay, we talked about that. Writing, journaling, and writing poetry about things that they observed in nature, making writing real. In math, how would math play a major role in outdoor play? Okay, Erica wrote, my kids love when they touch the soil and plants. Absolutely, Erica. I totally agree. So in math, it's very exciting because children can actually count things they see in nature, such as birds, trees, pie cones, critters, things of that nature. They also love to sort things. So they might do that as far as like rocks and leaves, and then they may even break it down further by seeds and figuring out their size and shape and color. They also might collect and graph data. So collecting data from a bird feeder, recording weather information, whether it be rainfall, snow, depending on where you live, temperature, that is all part of graphing data and using that to enhance math. Okay, Erica wrote, when I read about plants, they learn new words and things. Yes, absolutely. And Adli Hayrin wrote, we have a garden and each classroom has a garden keeper. That student is in charge of keeping our garden safe. We are going to be planting a vegetable garden. That's wonderful. I love that because kids get so excited when they see from day to day, even week to week, how, those vegetables are growing and the actual, the work that's put into it to actually come to fruition. That's the exciting part. Okay, so what are the negative effects of children not having enough outdoor play? Up until now, we spoke about the positives, but as you know, with life, there's always negatives to things and positive things to things. So the negative parts of outdoor play, or not having enough outdoor play rather, is that children between the ages of 6 months and 6 years spend an average of 1.5 hours a day with electronic media, and youths between the ages of 8 and 18 spend an average of 6.5 hours a day with electronic media. That is more than 45 hours a week, and this figure is on the increase. And unfortunately, technology has taken over society. Whether we want to believe it or not, it has. It's really hijacked our children. Unfortunately, a lot of parents are working, and it's much easier to tell your kid, late at night, if you work a night shift or whatever, and you come home and you're exhausted, hey, go put on the TV or go play with your iPad. But we're actually robbing our children of valuable time that they could be getting from Mother Earth. Also, this information is alarming and appears to even be on the increase. American children are increasingly overweight, partly due to lack of exercise. Studies also show that diabetes in children is on the uprise in the United States. This is due to diet, but also for the lack of exercise that children are not getting, plain and simple. It's really important that we really allow our children to go out and play. I know that in public schools even, they want to cut, outdoor time. And I'm really a big proponent of not doing that because I see the impact it has on children. I know from when I have my own children, when my kids were younger, my son would say, Mom, we didn't get to play enough on the playground today. And, he would come home and he would act out. And that was because he didn't have the chance to release that energy. And children just need to do that. They need to get rid of what's holding them back. And sometimes, being constricted in a classroom is not helpful. What else are the drawbacks of children not having enough outdoor play? So statistically, about 7 out of 10 U.S. children have low levels of vitamin D, which puts them at risk for bone and heart disease. The best source of vitamin D is sunlight, requiring only 15 minutes per day. And I really strongly emphasize that vitamin D is something that is so common in South Florida. Erica writes, when it's too hot or rainy outside, I let my children dance and stretch in class. Absolutely. You have to give them an outlet, whether it be outdoors or indoors. To me, children need that outlet, no matter what. There have been many books and articles written about the importance of outdoor education, one of the most recent being Richard Louv's book, Last Child in the Woods. There has probably been no term used more recently than his one, which is nature deficit disorder. The good news is that it is totally curable and we can help. So he actually wrote a book about this being a condition and this being affecting children of today. It's called nature deficit disorder. And the actual disorder sounds exactly like the name, that when we deprive children of nature, we're actually causing them to have a disorder. And as you see on this slide, what is nature disorder? What is nature deficit disorder? Daria writes, we also dance indoors or use the indoor playground. Absolutely, that's so important. So nature deficit disorder is not an official diagnosis, but a way of viewing the problem and describes the human costs of alienation from nature. And among them includes diminished use of the senses, right? Not being able to use our 5 senses, attention difficulties, higher rates of physical and emotional illness, and this disorder can be detected in individuals, families, and communities. So it's not strictly related to children, but as you can see, it does take a toll on families and communities. And studies show that nature may be useful as a therapy for children with ADHD. And that's a really important point to make as well, because I think, as I wrote here, some researchers now recommend that parents and educators make available more nature experiences, especially green places for these children. Sometimes, there are schools that don't have the physical space and they don't actually have enough of a playground. Well, it's really important that, you make an indoor playground, such as, Erica pointed out. In her class, she lets the children dance. But I know that when I owned a preschool, in one of our rooms, we had a section, which was like a science room, and a section of that room was actually green turf. and which is like fake grass. And the children absolutely loved it because for them, it was the experience of going back to nature and just being able to touch and feel it and, lay in it. That's what it's all about, being able to get in touch with our nature side, being able to, even pretend. They may not be able to go outside, the whole day, but they could at least pretend and they could interact with one another. And, that is important. Oops. Sorry. So as, I wind down in this training, I want to mention that I still didn't get any responses from you, about the video clip. And if you want, I can replay it again because I see we have about 5 minutes left. I might need to do that because a lot of you were saying that you couldn't see, but you could hear. So I want to see if maybe we can go back to that video and we can capture the sound as well as the details of what the gentleman said on the video. So let me just go back for a minute. Okay, try again to see if you guys can at least not see it, at least hear it. Okay, I see Erica wants to hear it again. Oh, and you said that you have a science room and have a mouse and the children feed him every morning. Oh, how cute. Classroom pets, rocks and science, absolutely. All of that stuff. And I'm glad you mentioned all that too, Erica and Adil Hayran, because it's really important that we mention that, even in our classrooms, we should be incorporating the outdoor environment, having a pet, having the ability to see rocks from outdoors and bring them inside. That's something that, is a good exchange. Okay, I'm going to play the video now.
For years, we've been doing sort of upper body gross motor as the pure focus of playgrounds, and it's not really working for us. We need full-on cognitive engagement during it. We need kids to have their brains fully tuned in, turned on, and that doesn't happen unless their senses are engaged. So smooth, perfect, anything doesn't work. We need it to be dirty. We need there to be, they can we need to stop cleaning everything, and there's some glorious in that, and that's what tunes. And their injury rates will drop if their heads are engaged in play, and the spontaneous social collaboration rates will increase. Meaning, without our intervention, they'll just play with each other, which is what we want. That's what we need from them. We want them to want to do this.
What skills do they end up with that they can't get here on a normal playground, so to speak?
So the big one is social collaboration. There's also really good research on STEM, and it turns out that science, technology, engineering, math, all of those things actually tune in and tune up if your brains are engaged. So you can't learn properly without engaging all those different parts of who we are and what makes us up. We're actually hardwired for this at an evolutionary scale. We need this experience. We need to smell and to taste. And guess what? If we don't do that, I'm not saying they got to eat some pork, but if you don't get your hands dirty and get into it, then your immune system doesn't work either. So there's a huge health repercussion to not doing this. So, and
Okay, well, I got some feedback that it keeps pausing and the words are broken apart. I'm really sorry. On my end, it's coming out clear, so I'm not sure what it might be. Maybe it could be your own internet connection, but for me, it's coming out clear. But I want to get back to making my last point, and that is one thing that I want to end on this training is that we need exactly what he said. We need to get back in touch with each other, and we need to be able to, to break into that aspect of who we are and why we're here. And that's a really important point, because that is what's lacking. Absolutely, the social collaboration at Hiren, that is absolutely the most important part. The social collaboration, the engagement with each other, the connection, the stamina, all of those things will, actually help children, not hurt children. And like he said, there will be less injuries and less reported illnesses if children just learn to be outdoors. And I want to end tonight's training on that note. I hope you enjoyed my training, and I hope that you were able to take away what you did from the training. And next week will be my last training from the series, and I hope you can join me for that. I look forward to being with you next week, and have a great evening and take care. Signing off.